Pro idsd is a product that's been in the workings for quite some time now. So when iFi finally announced that they'll be releasing the product, I was really excited to get my hands on it. So the question is then, has it lived up to my expectations? Let's check it out. In terms of design, when placed next to the Pro iCan, we can see that iFi kept a very deliberate theme going here with the design of these two devices. Both cases seem nearly identical, with the Pro idsd having just a slightly darker color and rougher finish to the touch. The slightly corrugated design and thermal cutouts give the product a very unique look. On the front panel, starting from the right, we have a power button, a large rotary knob which cycles through the input when turned and can adjust the brightness of the display when pushed. A long press of the knob can also invert the polarity of the signal. Next we have another rotary knob which, when turned, cycles through the 5 available digital filters. A single push on this knob will cycle through the DSD remaster feature, whereas a long press will engage the easy WPS Wi-Fi pairing function, but that will only happen if the Pro idsd is in Wi-Fi input mode. Just below this knob is a 3-way toggle switch, which is used to select between the solid state and tube analog circuitry. In the middle of the front panel, we've got an OLED display which is used to indicate which mode the device is in, whether it's being fed a PCM or DSD signal, the sampling rate, as well as which digital filter is being used. Next we've got a 1/4-inch single-ended analog output, and below that we've also got a 3.5mm single-ended output, as well as a 2.5mm balanced output. In between the 3.5mm and the 2.5mm outputs is another 3-way toggle switch which allows the user to select how much gain is applied to the signal. And finally we've got the analog volume pot. This can also be used as a preamp control when the appropriate setting has been made on the rear of the device. Just to the left of the knob there's also an infrared port for the remote control. Just like the volume control on the Pro iCan, the control knob on the Pro idsd is connected to an electric motor. So when you press the buttons on the remote control to increase or decrease the volume, the motor physically turns the volume knob. On the rear of the device we get a set of left and right XLR outputs, stereo RCA outputs, an Ethernet port, a coax/optical combo port, a USB host port, as well as a USB input, a micro USB slot, an XLR input, another coax connection for the Wi-Fi antenna, and 2 B and C connectors. Just below the Ethernet port is a switch which allows you to select whether or not the Pro idsd will output the signal via the rear outputs at a fixed level, or if the volume knob on the front will act as a preamp control. The top of the Pro idsd's enclosure also features a viewing port through which you can see the built-in vacuum tubes a little bit. This is the same design element that iFi used on the Pro iCan too. It actually looks like a bit of a cheeky nod to a very similar design element on some of Chord's products. Engaging the tube circuit also produces a nice warm orange light. However, this light is produced by 2 LEDs that are situated underneath the tubes rather than being produced by the tubes themselves. Of course, the main attraction point of the Pro idsd is how it sounds. I'm going to be frank and upfront about it. Holy damn! I absolutely love my micro idsd black label, and I still consider it to be one of the best value options out there, but there's no getting around it. The Pro idsd truly is something quite special. Using the micro idsd black label as my personal benchmark, it was exceptionally interesting for me to see what kind of improvements and refinements in sound can still be had. The Pro idsd just renders music with such a wonderfully effortless and natural fluidity that it can make you wonder, is there any other way to listen to music? Okay, end of hyperboles. No, the Pro idsd is unlikely to change your world into one filled with unicorns and willing maidens, or what have you. But it certainly will take your audio enjoyment up to the next level. Unless you own something like the Chord Dave, the Pro idsd could very well be an endgame device. Irrespective of the type of music, iFi have been able to produce a device that renders anything and everything to the point where it all just seems right. And having the ability to switch between solid state and a tube amplifier just makes things a little more customizable to your needs or wants. So let's talk a little bit about the tube versus solid state sound. When comparing the sound of two devices, I prefer to do so in a controlled environment where I can eliminate as many variables as possible, especially a volume mismatch, and also be able to instantly switch between one device and another via an A/B switch. Unfortunately, in the case of the Pro idsd, it's impossible to do so, as it not only takes a few seconds for the device to switch between its solid state and tube circuitry, but the volume is also reduced on the tube circuitry. So the following differences that I describe may be objective differences between the two circuits and or as a result of a volume mismatch. The Pro idsd's sound in solid state is extremely clean and non-fatiguing. I get no sense of digital etch or any sort of graininess unless it's in the recording to begin with. On the flip side, the tube sound is a bit softer and less defined, but ultimately offers a liquidy smooth presentation. It's by no means a significant departure from the solid state sound, but just has that little extra bit of a smoother character. Something to note though is that the Pro idsd's tubes are quite prone to translating vibrations into the audio stream, meaning that if you bump or tap on the casing of the device, that sound travels into the headphones too. Thankfully, this does not seem to be an issue for the RCA outputs though, so it seems unlikely that there would be some kind of infinite feedback loop due to vibration caused by full-sized powered speakers. So apart from the slight ringing issue, both the solid state and the tube sound of the Pro idsd is extremely clean and transparent. The only area or feature which it seems could possibly affect a number of people is with the available power in single-ended mode. Whilst the 1500 milliwatts available is still a fair amount of power, there certainly are some really power-hungry cans out there that may reveal the Pro idsd to be limited in this regard. It's actually a bit of a shame to see that even the micro idsd black label has more than double the power available. But for the vast majority of cans out there, 1500 milliwatts is more than enough. So regarding the sound differences between the Pro idsd and the micro idsd black label, of course, when looking at their respective price tags, a comparison between these two products may seem horribly inappropriate or unfair. However, keep in mind that thus far, the micro idsd black label was iFi's flagship portable desktop DAC amp solution. Whilst it will remain as their top portable device, it's interesting to see how it now performs against their ultimate desktop DAC amp solution. Comparing the sound of these two again showed just how damn good the micro idsd black label is, but the Pro idsd is clearly more refined. The manner in which the micro idsd black label portrays the audio just seems more congested than the way the Pro idsd does. From the soundstage to the instrument separation, the Pro idsd just has more fluidity and more space between the sounds. It's easier to place instruments within the stage as well as distinguishing instruments from one another. What I found really interesting is how the Pro idsd, despite having a seemingly wider stage, manages to place vocals more in the center. Vocals just seem clearer and more focused than on the micro idsd black label. This again perhaps adds to that sense of better separation between sounds. Another element that stood out to me was the naturalism of cymbals on the Pro idsd. On the micro, they came across as being more splashy, with less of that inherent brassy texture coming across. It's that transparency and that realism that gives the Pro idsd such a phenomenally enjoyable sound. And lastly, just for the hell of it, I wanted to see what it's like to hook up the Pro idsd to the Pro iCan. This was quite a fun thing to do, being able to join up iFi's two flagship products. The refinement of the Pro iCan's amplifier circuitry over that of the Pro idsd is apparent, but again, it's not a dramatic difference. If we look at the specs, in particular the dynamic range, we can see that the Pro iCan definitely performs better than the Pro idsd, but those are absolute measured differences. Instead, there are subtleties that make their presentation just that little bit different from one another. Compared to the Pro idsd, the Pro iCan seems to have a touch more smoothness, but with absolutely no loss in apparent detail to the sounds. There also seems to be a slightly wider perceived soundstage and perhaps a bit deeper too. But really, these differences either are extremely subtle or entirely as a result of a placebo. You see, the fact is, the dynamic range of human hearing is at around 120 decibels, whereas the dynamic range of the Pro idsd is 119 decibels and up to 137 decibels in single-ended for the Pro iCan. So whilst the Pro iCan technically performs 15% better in this regard, it's well and beyond what we can perceive with our limited sensors, and so it's essentially no difference to us. But let me know down in the comment section, what do you guys think? Is there any objective point to not us only purchasing products, but manufacturers producing products that are supposed to appeal to our senses? Is there any point to those products if they are capable of well and truly exceeding, to quite an extent, exceeding the limitations of those sensors of ours? Is there any point in that? Let me know. Okay, so getting back to this review. So does this mean that the Pro idsd can easily replace the Pro iCan? Well, to some extent, yeah. The thing is, we shouldn't try to differentiate between these two products in terms of how their audio performance is relative to one another, as they're just too close to one another for that. Instead, we should consider that each product has significantly different features that are different enough to justify the need for separate devices. So overall, the Pro idsd represents very nearly the best of the very best that iFi is capable of producing thus far. It's jam-packed with features, and it's truly a stellar performer. It would have been nice to see iFi kit this device out with some more power and perhaps Bluetooth connectivity as well, but for what it is, they've done a fantastic job. Consider this, the Chord Hugo TT, which does have Bluetooth though, is probably the closest competitor for the Pro idsd, and yet the Chord costs nearly twice as much despite not being able to offer both solid state and tube circuits, nor does it have Wi-Fi connectivity or a micro SD slot or USB host functionality. Taking that into account, we can see how the sheer bang for buck value of the Pro idsd emerges. Compared to its competitors, iFi did a great job here and have really managed to produce a truly objectively value-packed product. Sure, $2,500 is a fair chunk of change to be spending on a device that can be used for nothing other than music playback. But these devices aren't intended for anything else. The hardware is specifically selected and optimized to enhance an audio enthusiast's enjoyment of their favorite music. And for that reason, the price tag of $2,500 should be seen as an investment, rather than simply the cost of yet another device. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, please hit that like button. If you've got any questions or comments, leave them down in the comments. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.